You, sir, Mr. Ashok Muthuswamy. So we can start the session. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lalita ji. And it gives me immense pleasure to have Mr. Gopal Subramanyam, who is a veteran in the manufacturing world, in all aspects of manufacturing. And I will give an introduction of Mr. Gopal very soon. So Mr. Gopal, we are very honored to have you, sir, in this forum, and we are very keen on listening to you. That being said, for the interest of the audience, let me introduce Mr. Gopal Subramanyam. And today, Mr. Gopal Subramanyam is going to speak about how to leverage EFQM for competitive advantage and from a leadership perspective. And Mr. Gopal is extremely well qualified to speak about this chapter because of his extensive experience and giving a background of Mr. Gopal's experience. Here it is. So he is a mechanical engineer from University of Madras and graduated in 1976. And in the last 4.5 decades, he has been associated with the various aspects of manufacturing sector in India. And also he worked with several multinational companies while he was pursuing his manufacturing career. And his experience ranges from handling businesses of very high precision products like press tools, molds, and dies, to camera manufacturing, to heavy engineering such as earth moving and construction equipment, industrial machinery, and so on and so forth, just to name a few. And Mr. Gopal has held positions of Chief Executive Officer and Board of Director in large Indian companies, Indian multinationals, and he is also associated with both private and public sector units. And Mr. Gopal's significant experience comes from his long tenure at L&T, Larsen and Toubro, where he has done various roles in operations, business planning, development, technology transfer, and managing joint ventures. And eventually, Mr. Gopal was the CEO of two L&T companies. One is L&T Komatsu and other is L&T Howden. And after active service from L&T, Mr. Gopal is now serving as the chairman of the board of directors of SKF India, the renowned bearing company from Sweden. And also he is the nominee director of NSDC, and he's also on the governing council of three sector-specific skill councils. With that, I warmly welcome Mr. Gopal. And I would like, and the way we will keep this conversation is, we will slightly make it interactive as suggested by Mr. Gopal. So with that, Mr. Gopal, let me fire off the first question. So now we are having this VUCA world, right? I mean, in the last year, I mean, every year is throwing very significant challenges, right? I mean, the last but not the least was this COVID. And if you see the last, I would say, ever since I have been in the business in the last 3 decades, every other year is more complicated than the previous one, right? I mean, so it has been like that. The complexity is increasing, and that's why we call this VUCA world. And you have been in the business, Mr. Gopal, for almost 4.5 decades. Like 1.5 decades my senior here. And what is your perspective on this VUCA, mainly since you have headed companies, you are the chairman now. So what is your view looking from all aspects, from the top or laterally? What is your view, Mr. Gopal, on VUCA world?
Thank you very much, Ashok. I hope I'm audible enough to all of you.
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, thank you for a very generous introduction of me. I'm a very humble person. I've had the opportunity of associating with some of the best companies. So that is the boon that I had. And therefore, in that journey, I happen to have worked across sector, across functions, and so on and so forth. So for me, it's a pleasure to interact with the CIA TQM forum of Chennai. And I'm very glad that Ashok also happens to be one of my juniors from the same college. And Ashok also has had a very illustrious career and continuing to go on. Thank you so much. I just thought I'll place my appreciation, Ashok.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mr. Gopal.
coming to VUCA factor, all of you have been hearing this, but actually, if you see, VUCA has been happening in some way or the other in our country, and it has only got into an accelerated mode over time. Let's take the current VUCA factor. From the war in Ukraine to heightened lockdowns in China as we speak now. As we are speaking now, there is a war in Ukraine. It has already crossed a month. Heightened lockdowns are taking place in particularly two very major hubs of China, Shanghai and Shenzhen. It's pertinent for us to reckon what impacts it will have on the world economy, our own Indian economy, and globalization. Therefore, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, will it reshape the existing economic order built over a decade? How will geopolitics, further disruption to supply chain, and an upswing in COVID cases will not only affect China, who is the factory of the world, but also the entire world? Third is, after 2 years of being rocked by COVID pandemic, many rich countries have been easing restrictions. Hopes were rising that the global economy is on a path of recovery, in India too, but suddenly Russia's invasion of Ukraine has cast a doubt and created many knock-on effects, such as we speak, wheat, agricultural products, oil and gas have become scarce because between Russia and Ukraine, they're the major suppliers of oil and gas to most part of Europe. And agri products are a big supply. In fact, if you have people in Europe, particularly the other day I was talking to someone in Netherlands, they're saying that the cost of wheat has shot through the roof. In fact, they have reached a rationing mode. The Indian wheat is costing 4 times of what it used to cost not just 30 days away. So agri products, wheat, oil and gas is a problem. It has had a knock-on effect. Costs have gone up. Down below in South Sri Lanka, many of you would have heard that everything is in doldrums. Even paracetamol has gone up by 30%. The currency has been devalued, and today US dollar to Sri Lankan currency is 265 rupees, and so on and so forth. And there is a new surge in China's COVID. So I can go on and on. We are surrounded by, and Pakistan, the government is struggling to survive just around us. And you have in Nepal, you have problem. Then you have problem in Burma. So we are surrounded by South Asian nations which are having problem. You had an Afghanistan crisis. You now have an Ukraine-Russia crisis causing supply chain disruption. Just when it appeared that things are looking up after 2 years of COVID, thanks to excellent initiative taken all over the world in introduction of vaccine, but we are constantly being knocked down. So that is the kind of VUCA factor currently we are living in. Ashok.
Mhm. Okay, understood, Gopalji. And I will come to the context of EFQM. But let me ask you, now that you have mentioned the impact, how do we deal with them? So any cookie cutter responses you have, or any other direction you would like to point us?
Yes, I think what I would suggest is, as we move forward, let's set another context, and I would request you, because I know that you're very passionate, though you've held responsibilities of heading various businesses across sectors, Ashok. I know that you're very also passionate about excellence journey. And for the benefit of the audience, that could be an heterogeneous group, I wanted to give a quick recap of the EFQM model as it exists, particularly after it underwent a change in 2019. May I request you to set that context?
Sure, will do. Just give me a second. I'm just opening just some reference sheets. So see, and Gopal, you are very well versed on EFQM, but just for the benefit of larger audience, I would just quickly iterate what is EFQM and what kind of changes it went through in the year 2020. And for those who have not been exposed to EFQM, it is European Foundation for Quality model. It is used to assess the excellence of organizations. And the model that was there in place until 2019 was replaced during the year 2020 due to several changes, exactly like what Mr. Gopal outlined, and also what some of the questions which I asked him. Due to changes, the VUCA world, due to other product disruptions or disruptive technologies coming in place, digital, and the need for circular economy, and the need for co-creating value, the need for all elements in the value chain to work together. So based on all these things, the EFQM went through a very significant change. And now the EFQM model comprises of three parts. Maybe what I will do, I will just quickly share just a picture. Give me a second. So I'm not planning this to be a PowerPoint centric presentation, but nevertheless, let me quickly share the EFQM model. So if you see the EFQM model, just give me a second. I don't know how you are seeing it. Sometimes there can be an issue. Okay, could you see that? Are you seeing it on the presenter mode?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah, we were able to see, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, very good. So if you see the EFQM model has 7 elements split into 3 buckets. As you can see, the direction, execution, and results, DER. Those are the 3 main buckets. And under the direction, you have the purpose, vision, and strategy that an enterprise wants to pursue, and organizational culture and leadership. Organization, culture, and leadership. So these 2 elements come out of the direction bucket, and it tells, or rather, it answers these questions. Why an organization exists? What is the purpose does an organization fulfill? And why we are pursuing a particular strategy? What are we going to expect from the pursuit of a given strategy? It answers these questions. And once you know which direction to head, the next very important piece is how are you going to execute whatever you have planned. And there you have these 3 pillars. One is engaging stakeholders, other is creating sustainable value, third is driving performance and transformation. So again, let me explain each one of them very quickly. One is engaging stakeholders. See, as I mentioned earlier, a very tight, synced up engagement among all aspects of value chain is extremely essential, whether it is suppliers, customers, internal partners, or the stakeholders, meaning which the community in which we operate, or the government. All these stakeholders, how an organization is engaging with these stakeholders, right? So that is extremely important. And based on that engagement, how are we creating value and delivering that value? Right, so that includes anything from product design or process design or service design, and delivery of either a product or service, and supporting it after sales. All these things will come out of the creating sustainable value. And then where the bar, as we outlined earlier, both Mr. Gopal and I, the bar is always constantly kept, raised higher and higher. So how are we going to drive performance and transformation? Because organizations can't be standing in the same place, because it's like a treadmill. We have to always run to you and stay in the place. The minute you slow down, I think an organization will be history. So how do we drive performance and transformation? So all these things, all these 3 very critical aspects go into the execution bucket. And then the last, but certainly not at all the least, is results, because unless you produce a result, no matter what kind of strategy you have and how you deploy strategy, it wouldn't mean a lot. So the result comes from perceptive results, and objective results, right? So this is kind of the EFQM model, and as I mentioned earlier, CAI is a partner of EFQM in deploying this model. I mean, helping organizations deploy this model in India and also assess them. And it's on a scale of 0 to 1,000. And organizations that are between 400 to 499 are commended with the Gold Plus rating. And organizations that score between 500 and 599 points are given platinum commendation, and organizations that exceed 600 are given awards, and certain organizations which far exceed 600 are also called as a role model organization. So this is kind of the EFQM model, and one of the very important elements of EFQM model is that it helps organization assess their performance, and it also helps them benchmark themselves with their peers, or any other organization in India or abroad, wherever. So it's an extremely valuable tool to see where we fit in terms of delivering value. Are we ahead, or are there gaps? And it's a brilliant way to understand these questions. And if there are gaps, how are you going to address those gaps, with what kind of building blocks? So it's a very, very rigorous but very lovable journey of pursuit of excellence. So with that, Mr. Gopal, so I will stop my overview about EFQM, and over to you, Mr. Gopal.
Thank you, Ashok. Very well explained. This was very important, and therefore I requested you to tell. And you very clearly brought out the DER, direction, execution, and result. And your question, coming back to your question, how do you want, if the VUCA factors are there, okay, should we react to it? Should we prepare for it? Or what should one do at an individual level, organization level, nation level? And
Right.
today it's a connected world. It's not just nation alone. You are in a particular region. Whether you like it or not, you get sucked into it. Globalization made the world flat.
Mhm.
Okay. Then people started having certain advantages, certain disadvantages. Then the regionalism started. And so many things are there. And DER has to be applied everywhere. And before I answer one by one, couple of things that
Mr.
you
Gopal,
asked
can
some.
I briefly, yeah, just one piece I just want to quickly add on is, yeah, you have been running businesses, right? I mean, you have been a CEO of two L&T companies. Currently, you are the sitting chairman of SKF. So I would like you to explain to the audience about your views and experiences of organizations that have used this model and got business benefits. So I thought I would just add that to
Thank
you. Maybe probably
thank
it's in your list, but I thought I would just quickly emphasize
Sure,
that.
sure, sure. Let me answer that first.
Yeah.
So I've been basically involved in 3 organizations all my career, but out of that, the first one I'll not dwell because it was a formative phase, first 5 years, and more of baptism and learning, but I learned hell of a lot. But let me come back to these 2 questions, Larsen & Toubro Group and SKF. Did we apply EFQM model? And if so, did it benefit us? What happened? Okay, so let me answer. I'll have to go back to the introductory phase of EFQM model, which CII introduced in India probably 27, 28 years ago.
Mhm.
And CII has done a pioneering job in this, no doubt about it. I think we need to dwell into a bit of history on that. Okay. What happened is many of you may have heard from your seniors or maybe even experienced the 1991 economic liberalization. India was struggling. I mean, till 1991, India was a very closed economy, and one had to get government license to indulge in manufacture of an item, and we were very well protected with domestic market. And we had a balance of payment crisis. We had run out of foreign exchange. We didn't have enough foreign exchange to even do our imports for the next 6 or 7 days. We we pledged our gold and so on and so forth. And the only way out was World Bank and IMF told India, unless you open your economy and allow competition to come from abroad, we are not going to continuously give you money. This is what they said. So Indian economy suddenly opened, liberated. There was no more license Raj, no more protection to the early years. Some of us have grown in an era where we had to wait for our scooter for 10 years after booking Maruti car. We had to wait. Today, people come to your doorstep and beg with you to do a test drive. So it shook the Indian corporate, and L&T was also one of them. No doubt about it. It shook the hell out of every Indian corporate who were having a very, very protected environment. Now, CIA did a tremendous job, and I want to place it on record. CIA started the Institute of Quality. CIA also brought out this excellent model of allowing companies to test themselves as to where they stand through this CIA Exim Business Excellence Award. We in L&T used to think in 95, 96, we are already excellent. Okay. And we are a big conglomerate of diversified business. On one hand, we make nuclear power plants, then we make switch gears, then we were also into commodities like cement and so on and so forth. A very big conglomerate, and we were not known. Every unit of L&T went and challenged and underwent assessment of this CA exam award, and I was no different. At that time, I was a head of a particular manufacturing unit. I was not the CEO. I had a colleague who always who thought I am very diffident. I was not very enthusiastic about applying for this because you need to apply with an 80-page an application form, and you have to spend at least 200 to 300 hours of combined assessment, both by assessee and assessor, and before that, a lot of preparation. So he said, Gopal, why are you so diffident? I said, look, we are not there as yet. Several units of us applied, and our own experience at that time, at least 4 to 5 times we applied, and we didn't cross 2 levels. At that time we had 4 levels. Now it's it's converted to 3 levels. We just crossed only the second level, and a commendation certificate or strong commitment, nothing more than that. At one point in time, when I became CEO, I said, look, we don't seem to be firing on all the cylinders, because excellence requires all the three, what you said: direction, execution, and results. In the area of direction, approach, deployment, and assessment and refinement. And question is, why do we exist and why this particular strategy? So we didn't have. We thought we were pretty good in certain areas, on the execution area, but we were found wanting on several other areas in terms of giving an appropriate customer-driven solution. Okay. We were good on certain aspects of results. All of us know that we need to take care of basically 5 stakeholders. One is the investor community who have reposed confidence and invested in us because they want return on investment. They want growth and they want profitable growth. Second thing is the customer, without whom we are nobody, suppliers, partners, employees, and the environment and the government, all these 5 stakeholders. So we were good on certain parameters, but we were not so good, particularly in certain areas. For example, we are found hugely wanting at that time. Today it's a different scenario. Some units were good, some were not good. We were multi-location. So that was our journey. So we stopped applying for EFQM model till such time we felt that we have reached a certain point in time. This is one way of approaching. There is another way of approaching. To come back to your question, let's say we don't know where we are. This is where this CA Business Excellence Award and EFQM model is a mirror. It tells you what you are currently, and it also gives you a particular direction in which you can move towards excellence. So it's an egg first, chicken first case. It's a chain. Either you are well prepared and therefore an opportunity presents itself, you perform, or sometime you've been performing well and somebody notices and gives you another opportunity and you perform and it spiral. So it's both ways. One doesn't need to become excellent first and subject. One can also start by saying, let me embrace this model, and then it gives enormous benefit. Coming back to SKF, SKF is a global company where I'm the chairman. We haven't been challenging the CIA EXIM EFQM model. The SKF has got a different thing. It's got multi-units, multi-location across the world.
And Dr. Pugar.
And therefore, they have their own system. Like, many of you would have heard Toyota production system, Caterpillar system, and so on and so forth. SKF also has got what is known as SKF production system, which is not just production, but all in all. So there is a model which allows us to do it, which is based on EFQM. So this is how we do. Journeys can be pursued in both the ways to come answer your question. You can first say, let me test myself on where I stand, and then use that as a template and start addressing. Or you reach a certain level, subject yourself to this assessment. I deliberately want to use the word assessment because Indian mindset is all about audit. I mean, if you go back to the pre-1991 days, we used to produce and we wanted somebody to tell us what is good and what is not good. So we are always in the audit mode of asking somebody to audit. That's why every opening speech by big assessors, including Ashok and others, they always say we have come to assess. We have not come to find fault and do an audit of non-compliance. There you are, Ashok.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Gopal. So I will also add my experiences in this
In
space.
fact, Ashok, if you can allow me, let me ask you the question.
Sure,
Ashok,
please.
you have worked across sectors, and not only
Mhm.
across sector, across geography, across the world. Okay, at quite an early age, you went to the United States, you pursued your MS, and then thereafter you worked. I think not, no, I think for about 15 years, right?
Mm.
You worked in different sectors, different geographies. In
Mhm.
India, you started in a hardcore manufacturing. Then you went there and you were into a different kind of league. You came back again. You got joined a process plant. Tell me how you applied your this model. Did you apply and benefit, or did you reach a certain level of excellence and thereafter subjected yourself to an assessment?
Sure. I will answer that. But before I answer, I just want to start off with if I could call it a joke. You mentioned about how pre-91 everything was scarce, right? At the time, I used to hear from my father and his friends about how long it used to get a Lambretta scooter or car, ambassador car. So here is a joke. So one guy books an ambassador car, and the guy on the counter tells him to come after 10 years. Okay. He asks him, okay, I've come after 10 years on the same day, but tell me whether I should come on the morning or in the afternoon. Okay. And the guy behind the counter asked me, why does it matter? You're going to come after 10 years. And this guy says, no, the phone guy is going to put a phone at my home on the morning. So I can only come on the afternoon. So the point is, before 91, we are hear about all these horror stories, right? And some of you are very fortunate to not exactly have been in that era. Of course, there are a lot of good things in every era, but this is not the nicest thing about the previous era in the 80s or 70s. So where things are scarce, manufactured goods is extremely scared commodity. So I mean scarce commodity. So and the way that we have progressed in the last 30 years is absolutely phenomenal. Even though we have a lot of gaps to be plugged, and even though we still need to pursue the excellence, it's a never-ending journey. But I think we also need to recognize what the successive governments have done in the last 30 plus years to put us where we are right now. But that, jokes apart, and also mentioning about how we have progressed. And answering Mr. Gopal's specific question about my own experience. So see, as you mentioned, Mr. Gopal, so I used to work in an aerospace company, Eaton Aerospace in California, where you do not have any option to make a mistake because the company at that time was making landing gears and avionics control switches. So there is no question of PPM or anything. The failure has to be absolutely zero, right? I mean, it has to be 0 ppm. It was always above Six Sigma level. It has to be absolutely flawless product. And from there, I went to work for Hewlett Packard for 10 years, also in the US. And HP made some extremely highly reliable computing products and also medical diagnostics equipment. Hello, those who are not speaking, could you please go on mute? You are not. Okay, so coming back to the point here. So I had a very good opportunity to work in the US on these two very different sectors. One was defense, military, aerospace kind of environment, and other was consumer product, which also needs to be extremely reliable because servicing a product in the US is prohibitively expensive. To send a person to go and fix a printer or server, it can be very costly. So these organizations had excellence in their DNA. They had all the systems and processes very well laid out. And of course, US was mainly using Malcolm Baldrige criteria, which is, I would say, another parallel path, just like EFQM. I don't want to compare between this one and that one. They all are various different paths. But long story short, the US predominantly uses Malcolm Baldrige criteria. And as I also mentioned, some of these organizations which I was fortunate to work had excellence in their DNA woven into their fabric. So when we pursued Baldrige, for example, at HP, it was a smooth sail. We were checking on all the boxes of, in today's equivalent of direction, execution, and result. Of course, it was Baldrige criteria, and almost 20 years ago. But still, the concepts are same. You have to set a direction, and you have to execute towards the direction, and you have to achieve results. Hewlett Packard had all these elements put together. Very, very crisp strategy, which was cascaded through the organization. And HP, 20 years ago, it was a $100 billion company. One company, $100 billion. That was 20 years ago. And of course, today it has split into a few parts for whatever reason. I don't want to go there. But coming back to the point, 20 years ago, $100 billion, in today's equivalent, maybe $200 billion company. The way they set the strategy and the way they cascade it across, I don't recall exactly, around like 300,000 employees, if I recollect well. So the way they cascade it, and then the way the company was executing, and all was absolutely phenomenal. Like everything was like, extremely well-oiled machine. For example, the NPI process is a well-oiled machine. It would be like almost producing a product. The new product development will be like, it will be a factory. Similarly, new product introduction will be a factory. All these things were factory model. So these organizations, cutting the long story short, these organizations had excellence built into that. So when we applied Baldrige, it was a smooth sail. And then I moved from US to India almost 12 years ago, and I was with Tata Group. And Tata also used its own version of business excellence model called Tata Business Excellence Model, TBEM. And Tata, in the last 20 years, as mentioned by Mr. Gopal, post 91, Tata also faced a lot of competitive pressures, and they greatly leveraged this model. I don't know, some of you may recall one Mr. Dr. J.J. Irani, who was the MD of Tata Steel. He borrowed this model from Honeywell in the US, the Baldrige model, and he adapted it to suit Tata's, and he set up an organization within Tata Group to deploy this model across all Tata companies. And Tata greatly benefited from using this model as a reference and bringing them up to whatever the level, which was on the other way of pursuing a model, as Gopal also mentioned earlier. how do you deploy a model? One is probably you see where you do an assessment and see where you are, or you take the model as a benchmark and then you take yourself up to match to that benchmark. So Tata, I mean, the Hewlett Packard was the former and Tata was the later, but nevertheless, the way Tata Group deployed this model was nothing but spectacular. And that was very well, we are seeing on the results, whether it's TCS, Tata Steel, Tata Motors, company after company, no short-term thinking, everything is absolute long-term vision, no cutting corners in pursuit of excellence. So the model helped the group deliver significant business outcomes. And now in the last close to now a little more than 8 months, I came back to my original company group where I was a GET. I joined TAFE. TAFE also has excellent processes and systems in terms of product development, processes, so that we always want to meet the promise that we are making to customers. So these are great organizations. Somehow I have been very fortunate to be associated with great companies like TAFE, which is Tractor and Farm Equipment, which has both the TAFE or Massey Ferguson branded tractors, as well as Asia tractors under Ford, or Tata Group, as I mentioned earlier, or Hewlett Packard, or Eaton Aerospace. So these are great organizations which has greatly leveraged various different excellence models, but all roads lead to Rome. So these models always help companies have a frame of reference and always aspire towards excellence. These excellence models serve as a guiding light as we pursue excellence, and it is a continuous pursuit, right? I mean, it's not like been there, done that, and once you reach a particular place, always the bar keeps getting raised. So it's a never-ending journey. So hopefully, Gopalji, I mean, that's my take on my various experiences, India and abroad, and also in various sectors. So maybe I took a little more time, but I over to you.
Thank you, Ashok. So good that you brought the perspective of your own experience and how excellence was embedded in some of those companies, whether they are Indian companies or multinational. I think now I'll switch over to another topic, which I happen to cover in one of the BE conclave, in case some of them have heard. It may be a repetition, but it's worth repeating. But
I was about to ask you that because I was very fortunate to attend your keynote speech in the CAA's IQ conclave. And I'm sure not too many too many people in our audience would have had a chance to hear you at that time. So it would be great if you could reiterate what you said there, even for my own benefit, so that some of these things I would like to hear one more time from you.
Thank you. So what I would like to do is next 10-15 minutes, I will walk you through my personal experience of having assessed award-winning companies. Okay, I'm going to give the example of 4 or 5, out of which 2 won award, 1 won prize, what it was known earlier, and 2 other organizations have not really challenged it, but they are doing some excellent work. So this will give you a perspective of what each company is doing and excelling. This is a practical experience of having assessed those companies across sectors, right? So let me walk you, having covered about India's situation and all that. Many of you might have been part of CII Exim Business Award assessment, either as an assessee or an assessor. I happen to be the senior assessor or lead assessor, as somebody may like to call. And I would like to dwell the excellence practices out for at least about 4 or 5 companies, which I assessed, and they went on to win the award. The first example is that of a mid-sized 30-year-old Indo-US joint venture company who had a revenue of about 1,200 crores that was engaged in energy products like cable accessories, connectors and fittings, installation and protection services. I think Ashok was also my co-assessor on that, if I'm not mistaken. And they were catering to oil and gas meters, transformer, and so on and so forth. But even from formative early years, this company had demonstrated and implemented many forward-thinking initiatives. I'm talking about 1996 when ERP was not at all well known in India. This company implemented ERP. In 19, they felt that you must have a visibility end to end of what's going on in the company from the downstream to upstream side so that everybody has a visibility of what's happening to a particular order. They implemented ERP in 96. They launched their own website and intranet in 2001. Not many companies had done that. And from 2008 onwards, they employed their shop floor workers through what is known as SMT, self-managed team, who were empowered to run a plant without the help of a supervisors, right? And they challenged JPM's TPM model, and across 4 or 5 units, they got accolades of JPM TPM awards. I'm talking all this happened in this company much before 2008 or 9. The significant feature of this company is R&D efforts were CEO led, who personally steered portfolio mapping in the areas of material processing, AI, intellectual properties, nano composite material, flameless heat shrinking, and so on. The company at that time, when we assessed about 4 years ago, had already obtained 30 patents over a 5-year period. All in all, this mid-sized company, it's a mid-sized company, was a prize winner and demonstrated, that means what we now call as an award.
Very good. All the best.
Hey guys, please go on mute if you are not speaking. I would suggest everyone to go on mute except for Mr. Gopal and me because we are being interrupted.
Thank you. We'd appreciate. Unless you have a question to ask, which at that time we can unmute and ask.
Yeah.
So all in all, this was a mid-sized company, and they went on to win the award, and not a benchmark company. Win the award, and ably supported by passionate participation of employees across rank and file. This is what we saw. That was an example of one particular sector who were in a joint venture company, and in fact, it's the longest running joint venture company that one can come across in India. It's a 35-year-old joint venture company. The next is a example of a PSU in defense electronics. This organization focuses on an approach of providing solution of solution platform model to Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force. They strive to be always future ready with new products and system offering from their captive R&D and reduce the nation's dependence on foreign technology. During our assessment, we witnessed their strong focus on innovation so as to secure their future with a 10-year horizon at any point in time. Year on year, they spent about 8 to 10% on R&D, which of course is predominantly application engineering in nature. Nearly 50% of their management staff are dedicated to design engineering and R&D work. Now, R&D is pure play fundamental research, and design engineering is the application part of it. 50% of the management staff in this PSU. Many people, we do have a lot of opinion, contrarian opinion about the way of, but this PSU demonstrated excellent forward-looking initiatives. 50% of the management staff were devoted to design engineering and R&D work. Their CMD himself personally drove these design engineering and R&D effort, and the company when we assessed was sitting on a healthy order book to ratio of more than 4. And they had a very clear visibility year on year revenue generation. In fact, before we went to this company to assess, it's a giant PSU, we were not too sure the way they wrote their application for CAI Exim Award. None of us were enthused, and we thought perhaps they may end up at level 1 or level 2. Nobody thought that this company will go on to win not only the award, but they went on to become the role model company. Such was the depth of this organization, purely on the basis of forward-looking solution of solution, excellent effort on R&D. Many companies in India don't do this. Both first company which I mentioned as well as this have been forward-looking, future-ready, and investing for the future, and that's what they did. And they went on to become the role model organization. The third one which I assessed went on to also become the role model organization, is an example of an Indian consumer durable SBO, who doggedly fight for their appointed space and market share in a field comprising giant MNC subsidiaries with deep pockets. Their growth story over the last 10 years signified high resilience, perseverance, rebound, and consistent growth. They have relentless focus on underpenetrated, underserved, and highly price-sensitive rural Indian market. They run an R&D center with substantial resources towards smart technology and telematics. In fact, in the last 2 years, when the vaccination was rolled out, first challenge that anybody faced was how to store in this vaccination at a critical minus 70 degrees centigrade. When I assessed this company in 2019, much before the pandemic, they were already ready with this kind of a thing which can be carried with in their hand to rural areas. That was the kind of vision they had, and they invested on the R&D for this. Their success story is truly one of the proverbial last man standing in a battlefield comprising giant MNCs. All who's who of consumer durables, white goods manufacturing companies in the world today who dominate in India are there, and this company has doggedly withstood and have a very what do you call comfortable market share. And third, they are still third in position. And they follow green and good and green in a very big way, not only in their own plant, but across all their supply chains. So this is a third example. So first example was a mid-sized company catering into a joint venture company and energy products, but not in the high end of energy products, but the last end. The second one is a giant PSU. The third one is an Indian consumer durable SBU. All the three companies have demonstrated excellence in terms of effort for future readiness, in terms of R&D effort, which is CEO led and not necessarily only wait for today's reaction. That's how all the three companies have been able to manage VUCA factor very well. The next two companies which I'm going to do was quickly is my own company, which I've associated L&T, Larsen & Toubro. As I said, 95, 96, each of our vertical used to challenge the EFQM model. And we found that we were not able to go beyond what do you call commitment or not beyond that. We never went on to become prize winners or award winners. So what is it that this company is doing now, particularly in the last 2 years? Many of you will be knowing about Larsen & Toubro because you're Madras, Chennai based. Today, L&T is a topmost construction company, and the second one is way down, way down. So can we afford to become complacent because of this? The answer is no. Digitalization is taking place in this company in a big way, massive way. I'll quickly give you examples of how digitalization taking place in this company is, this company deploys across mega project sites across the globe, across the country, right? The company is currently sitting on a very high order backlog to the tune of 3.4 lakh crores of order backlog. The shareholders have a very good visibility of this company's future revenue generation. But according to the CEO of this company, what needs to be addressed in the immediate term is labor shortage, predominantly migrant workers. Multiple actions have been triggered by this company during the last 20 odd months of this pandemic, and redressal is very much under control. In fact, during the pandemic, various companies contributed towards the Prime Minister's scheme to address the pandemic. This company went beyond the mandatory requirement and spent nearly 500 crores every month to take care of all their employees, created a bubble much before the word bubble came into fore. Today in IPL, we hear this word very often. Nearly 500 crores per month were spent in making sure the employees are given housing, medical facilities, because they're all migrant workers from across. A few glitches here and there were there, but all in all, they did this very well. The third part which they did is digitalization. While L&T is a hardcore brick and mortar company, they're currently driving innovation through a number of digitalization initiatives. One of the largest digitalization program was triggered in 2016 which is an envy of PR manufacturing and EPC company. EPC is engineering, procurement, and commissioning in the world. The construction arm of this is India's largest. At any point in time, there are about 1 million contractors operating fleets of heavy machineries at about close to 1,000 job sites, most of them in remote areas, and deploying close to about 160,000 staff and 300,000 laborers. Mind-boggling. How do you keep track? Many high-cost assets are deployed at job sites. Every asset is deployed is tracked using a number of sensors on a real-time basis. Now, some of them are old generation machines, some of them are new, embedded with chips. But old generation machine, dumb machine was embedded with chips, like which particular crane is working at which job site, its availability, its utility, power consumed by it, which driver is at its cabin, his body temperature, the weight that he is lifting, so on and so forth. The sensor placed at the wire rope of the crane picks up the tension it undergoes at site, fitted with a remote sensing, online monitoring intelligent chips, continuously transmitting the data to a satellite and measures how many hours the machine is working, what has been its fuel consumption, when and how the operator performs excavation if it's an excavator, is it in engine idling mode, is it in economy mode or power mode, how he optimally loads hydraulic system, how the radiator and oil cooler of the machine is performing, how is the engine loop system consuming oil, and so on and so forth. So this data is simultaneously transmitted to the owner of the machine, to the R&D center at the respective places, and to the owner's dealer and service centers. So everybody downloads the data, dissects and bisects the data, and appropriately goes and not do reaction maintenance, but preventive maintenance and predictive maintenance. Thus, technology has been used to the hilt by construction, which is a hardcore brick and mortar company, but extremely well. In fact, today, if any of you listen to the CEO of this company, Mr. Subramanyam, SN Subramanyam, he oozes technology. He does not allow any initiative in the company to take place without the use of technology, AI, and ML. And I can go on and on. But what needs to be understood in all this is, all the examples I gave are companies who build resilience and robustness in all their business practice, solely with a focus on enhancing shareholder value, relentless customer obsession, healthy and collaborative partnership with vendors, dealers, and all the channel partners. This is where technology helps a lot. You don't have to wait for data to be created in an Excel sheet, PowerPoint to be created, and so on. Empowering the employees to enjoy a great place to work, to come and work. In fact, I want to dwell on this. We went through a VUCA where suddenly people were expected to operate in an environment of work from home. WeWorks and so on and so forth thrived. Suddenly today people are going back to the office. So things are changing very rapidly. And today we are talking about hybrid models. And lastly, giving back to society and environment. This is where I mentioned about companies went beyond the call. For example, Tata Steel, which Ashok mentioned, they didn't wait for this 2% profit to be spent on CSR spend. In fact, when I went to assess that as a jury member of Prime Minister's Trophy, I found that they were spending nearly 3.8% of their profit on society and environment with tender care. And all in all this makes our government and the nation feel so proud about us. So digitalization is already a big game changer. However, they are slowly and early adapters to digitalization, and the tail is pretty long. And many of you are sitting in this, I think also should embark on digitalization apart from excellence journey. Over to you, back to Ashok.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Gopal. So some of very excellent points that you mentioned. I'm so happy to hear it one more time from you, and I'm also sure the audience would have greatly benefited. But just to put a recap, some of the points that you mentioned include innovation, whether it's product related innovation or leveraging digital capabilities, right? I mean, in the Earth Movers case, you mentioned about how the data is captured and performance is monitored real time and feedback is given to the relevant stakeholders so that the performance can be continuously improved. So if you see all world-class organizations, they have this thread, so a few things which which I'm going to give as a recap based on your overview. One is innovation, right? I mean, if you see on all these companies which you mentioned, they all have pursued innovation in products and in processes. And next piece is very well managed operations, right? From defining the strategy to cascading the strategy to pursuing the strategy to achieving results. Extremely well knit. And third, very important aspect is that the hunger for excellence is always there, even when people are sitting on a very good backlog of orders. So, so some of the organizations, I do know which organizations you mentioned, and for some reason you didn't name them. I also don't want to name them, but some of these organizations sit on a very good, very healthy order book. But in spite of that, they act like their business is in deep trouble, and that sometimes that they always operate with some insecurity, which is a wonderful thing because the minute somebody becomes complacent, they lose the track, right? So hunger for excellence. And one parallel I would like to bring, you mentioned about Tata Group, about how they are when it comes to long-term value creation or CSR or their emphasis on quality. So great organizations, I would say, think alike. In fact, I would see a lot of parallels between Tata and TAFE. I was very fortunate to work for Tata for 11 years, and TAFE, even though I have been with TAFE for only 8 months, my father used to work for the same group for 40 years. So I very much understand the DNA of organization. One piece I would like to quote from TAFE is our former chairman's brilliant quote on excellence. The way, some of you may know that our former chairman is Mr. Sivaselam. And the way he defined excellence is, I'm going to quote Mr. Sivaselam. He said that excellence is just not something that we engineer, inspect, and input into our products. It is an innate desire to obtain the best that comes from within each one of us. It defines our lives at work and at home and ripples out into the world around us. So this is an extremely eloquent statement by our former chairman, Mr. Sivaselam, where the way he has put it is that all TAFE aids should be an embodiment of excellence, right? I mean, and reflected throughout. It's not just what you do in whatever the daytime job that you have. You have to get it into the DNA. And so our chairman's quote on excellence will always serve as a beacon as TAFE aids pursue excellence. And in short time, I couldn't get the quote of Mr. JRD Tata, but JRD also mentioned something very, very similar. So it goes on to say that great men and great organizations, to a large extent, think alike and do alike. So with that, I would like to thank Mr. Gopal for his view. But Gopal, before we open the floor for questions, any questions to me?
No, before questions, more than question, there are two other aspects I wanted to touch.
Please.
Because when you prompted me, you asked about, given all the VUCA factor, what organizations are doing, which I mentioned my own practical experience of where I worked and where I've assessed. Coming to one other question which you raised was, how does an individual do? What does individual do? Should he prepare for himself to in this VUCA world? Okay, I think that is also a very important factor. Two things I want to dwell. I recently happened to read a book released by one of my ex-colleagues. Among various chapters of excellence, he mentioned one aspect called you always have to be +1. He used the word you have to be +1. So everyone who's a budding executive who may be in the role of a CXO or who's probably already in the role of a head of a unit, a SBU, he always needs to be personal excellence. Many of us might have had experience of undergoing training of Stephen Covey's 7 habits. So which is still relevant in any given situation. We always need to be +1. What do I mean by +1? I began my career in a hardcore shop floor as a shop supervisor, but I always had in mind that I will go beyond. Okay, so that's why I picked up as I grew along various competencies, because in the unlikely or likely event you are in charge with the responsibility of heading a business, you may be found wanting on certain areas like sales and marketing. How do you sit in front of a customer, negotiate and clinch an order, or lose an order which otherwise you would have won just because you didn't have the ability to articulate? Because sales and marketing is not taught in any books, it is experiential. IIMs and Harvard will quote business case studies of what happened. They don't teach you. Whereas in manufacturing, it is reasonably
the body of knowledge is there.
Body of knowledge is there. You have tools, you have QC tools, Six Sigma, and so on and so forth.
Right. It's more of a science.
So if somebody is starting his career in manufacturing, how can he become a 1+? So watch all this very carefully. Second is the area of finance. It is not gone are the days when finance was the domain of only the chartered accountant, head of accounts, or controller. Some of the Western countries even today use the word financial controller. It's all gone. Today, a person has to grow holistically. Similarly, if a sales guy goes and gets an order, it doesn't stop there. He not only wins the order, he is responsible for its on-time delivery and good quality. He can't shift the blame on manufacturing. He is responsible for collection of money. Can't leave it to somebody else to do it. So he has to become holistic. So one has to become always +1, right? And we can go on and on. There's no end to this. Okay. Similarly, guys in sales, he has to look at quality management and production and so on. And one fine day, suppose he becomes in charge of both manufacturing and sales and marketing. If he doesn't know how to deal with union, he's had it, right? And third area is how to deal with government without sacrificing the ethics of the company. So that is one part I wanted to mention. I want to conclude by saying somebody's quote was quoted by one of the industry leader in Bangalore, which when I attended some program. All of us talk about value creation, right? Today we may think TAFE is valued at so many billions of dollars, okay? Or Larsen & Toubro is currently at $21 billion where I was associated, and enhancing shareholder value. If somebody said a value is a value only when you value it as a value, very profound. A value is a value only when you value it as a value. I mean, if somebody says that property in T Nagar is worth some 10 crores, it is 10 crores if it is valued today at 10 crores and you dispose it. If you hold on to it and gets devalued overnight to 5 crores, it's gone. Or if you sell it under distress today and maybe 2 months from now it becomes 15 crores, like share market. So value is a value only when you value it as a value. So it's a continuous journey. Excellence is a continuous journey. You never know that you have reached it. I thought on the case of individual excellence, this is what I wanted to mention.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, connecting back to EFQM model based on what you said, this 1+, where the very strong emphasis of EFQM is entire value chain throughout how you strategize, how you create value, how you deliver value. And delivering value, I mean, creating and delivering value is not just an engineering job or a manufacturing job. You need to have a lot of disciplines, whether it's finance, whether it's sales and marketing. So a professional, I mean, so in a way, this model also helps organizations understand what are the various aspects involved in being very successfully delivering value and continuously improving themselves and continuously producing results for themselves in financial terms, and also delivering results for the society and community at large and government. So I'm seeing all these things, they all are coming at a confluence. So wonderful to
hear from you, Mr. Gopal. So a lot of very new, fresh insights. It also helps me to further clarify my mental models, images, and frameworks as I was speaking to you in this fireside chat. So with that, let us, if okay with you, Mr. Gopal, we can open the floor for questions, right?
Yeah, is there somebody moderating the Q and questions or people
I
can?
don't know. Lalita, is it something that you can do? I mean, can you moderate the Q&A?
Are there any questions posted on the chat box?
I don't see
So,
that. We
so
didn't
sir,
ask people to do. Yes,
yeah,
over to you, Lalita. You can take it from here
yeah,
on Q&A.
yeah, thank you, sir. Participants, you can post your queries on the chat box, or one by one you can call upon Gopal sir, so you can post your questions, please.
Okay, good evening. Hope I'm audible. I'm
Yes, yes, you
Venugopal
are.
from
Yes, Krishnamurthy.
now
We can see you and hear
formerly
you.
it is
Please go
WAPCO.
ahead.
Now we have acquired by ISRF. It's ISRF Commercial Vehicle Control System India Limited. It was wonderful. I had the TQM and Six Sigma for the commercial vehicle division in India with the company for the last 9 years and in the industry for the last 28 years, completely in the automotive world, in quality and product development. It was excellent to hear from both of you. And obviously what you said, VUCA applies. At least I joined the industry from 1993. From that time, as you rightly said, only the quantum is changing. VUCA is not changing, only the quantum is changing. So it's quite important that, as you rightly said, both for the company and for the individual also, there are challenges. What today, in IT, what they call as upskilling is very important to keep you on the hand. And then for the company also, how do you contribute? One context I want to share here is like EFQM. As you know, WAPCO was before TVS. They've been starting working with a lot of Japanese sensei's. So recently, in the last 3 years, we started working with Kaizen Institute. Kaizen Institute globally, and then there is an Indian partner called Hansei Kaizen. So they started working on a similar assessment model. They call it as the EMEXI, Integrated Manufacturing Excellence Initiative. Recently, they started 2 years before in India, and we went through in our Ambattur plant and our Jamshedpur plant in the last 2 years. It is very similar to what you said, direction execution results. They call it differently, that's all. So it was a very nice experience, and our Ambattur plant got a platinum rating, and we were the first in India to get platinum. We also went for the global. We're one of the global finalists. That is not important. What is important here is the participation, and we tend to learn something, and again we go learn, phrase the cycle continues. So for us, it was a great learning experience. Again, we went through all the old books, what we learned, because there are people in this company for the last 35 years. Mr. Kanepan, our managing director, is here for the last 40 years. So of course, learning never ends. So it was continuous learning, can be FQM, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. As you rightly said, we try to keep us on the hunt in this challenging world and keep ourselves competitive to the internal and external stakeholders. That is what is very relevant from the discussions today. Thank you very much for that.
Thank
Great,
you.
great,
Thank you.
Mr. Krishnamurthy Venugopal. I know about WAPCO to some extent, but Japanese experience, I have had that for 16, 17 years.
Yeah,
Their way of pursuing excellence is completely different.
totally different.
They,
Yeah.
they always believe in down to earth, house in
Gemba.
order. They do not Gemba, they do not believe in applying high sounding jargons and all that.
Exactly.
Very, very down to earth. And I myself, Komatsu, where I was associated
Matsu, yeah.
in the joint venture company, as I was CEO of that, but make no mistake, they also have two approaches. The kitchen has to be in order. No compromise on that.
Yeah.
Kitchen has to continuously work on continuous improvement.
Yeah.
No compromise on that. Close
Hmm.
association with vendors. They
Yeah.
value their vendors very, very high.
Yeah.
I will have to share with you during tsunami. When I was the CEO of L&T Komatsu joint venture, my deputy CEO was a Japanese, and he used to tell me that the CEO of Komatsu Global in Japan did not go home for 72 hours, and the job that he did was marshalling people to make sure that their vendors and families are taken care. So that's one kind of an approach, partnership management. And that company spends nearly 4% of their sales revenue on R&D year on year, 3 to 4%. And R&D and methods engineering work closely hand in hand. So their R&D is application engineering, absolutely application engineering and not theoretical. So I can relate to what you said.
No, you're exactly right. They focus more on Gemba, no fancy presentations. They don't like Six Sigma. The Western world and Japan don't go together. But of course, what I'm saying is, no, as you rightly said, in the VUCA world, whatever tool we use for continuous improvement, we need to be always on the, on the extreme end of the competition to stay floating in business. At the end of the day, every excellence model finally has to transform to the business results, right? That's very important.
Yeah.
So I'm really seeing this in the last 9 years because I've been quality engineering and all. TQM is quite new to me after joining WAPCO. For the last 4 years, I'm in this position. So I'm really enjoying a lot, learning a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just want to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ashok,
Thank
there are a
you.
couple of questions on the
Yes.
chat box.
Correct,
May I-
correct. That's what
may
I
I
was about
request
to
you
say.
take two questions on that. One is
Mhm.
from Suman Verma on EFQM
Right.
and
Right.
the one on the Gold Dot book.
Right.
Can you take these two questions?
Yeah,
And the other
sure.
one.
See, Suman's question, that's slightly tricky because the point is both Balraj and EFQM, they don't like to be compared. There are very strong followers of one system and similarly equally strong followers of other system. But I will only tell you my view, at least my experience or my perspective, right? And I see everyone can have his or her own perspective, and yeah, not necessarily other people may need to share the perspective. So my perspective, having involved in both models. When I was with Tata, I used to pursue Baldrige model, which was an adaptation of, or rather, Tata Business Excellence model is an adaptation of Baldrige model. So I have some experience of using Baldrige, but I have very significant experience of using EFQM model in the last several years to assess various companies along with Mr. Gopal. Right, both of us are senior or lead assessors, and we go assess companies, whether it's PSUs, very large organizations, small organizations. We have the experience. So, in my view, I don't want to tell you which one is which, but one is slightly prescriptive, and other is slightly non-prescriptive. So I will let you make the inference on which one is which. But in my view, it does. And even I think our colleague also just spoke, Krishnamurthy spoke about Kaizen Institute's model. So, but if you see all these things, they will lead more or less to the same destination, whether it's Deming, there's also a Deming model, Kaizen Institute's model, EFQM model, TBEM model, which is Tata's model, Baldrige model. But by and large, see, excellence, pursuit of excellence, the journey will be more or less the same. Maybe there may be some nuances, some hues, some variations, but I don't see a whole lot of huge variations. The thing is, one thing that companies have to do is they have to see culturally which model they are aligned with. For example, some companies may be bottom up driven. They may find, for example, Deming to be more applicable. Other organizations maybe have a complete interconnect from top to from top down, bottom up. They may find EFQM. Right, and some companies may not necessarily want a very prescriptive model. They may use Baldrige. But these are my interpretations, and I will let people uh, go through various models. If anyone wants to pursue a business excellence model, don't do it in haste. There are quite a few models. Find out which model is a good cultural fit and then go and pursue that. Because while all of them will lead to a particular destination, which is not very different from one another, but the way it will go, the path may be slightly different, and find the path that is very well aligned with your culture. So that's also when I want to add on this one, because anything more I say, it may not be very productive. So
No, thank
that
you, sir. I got the I got the
is,
insight here. Thank
and the next question, let me open the chat window. Give me a second. Yeah, Goldratt Rahul Chandran is asking, industry might have got shaken after the release of Eli Goldratt's book, The Goal. What the theory of constraint in this VUCA world and with the EFQM model, do you think a goal has any relevance? Um,
So this goal, in my view, there are two outputs of ELI goal, right? One is TOC, theory of constraints, and other is critical chain project management, which is CCPM. I would say these are excellent tools to align your operations. For example, the goal very clearly talks about the goal of an organization, which is making money, put very bluntly, and how everything else all other aspects of an organization has to subordinate themselves to align with this goal. So I wouldn't necessarily say that as a model or anything, but it's a concept. It can be integrated. It may not necessarily be connected with the business excellence model that you are pursuing, but it may be a good way to execute an operation, right? I mean, say, for example, TOC will be a good way to execute a given strategy. Similarly, if you are a project organization, CCPM will also be an excellent way to execute your project management. For example, Mr. Gopal mentioned about L&T. L&T has its own project management institute, right? I think based out of both Chennai and Baroda. So, because there, I mean, I'm talking about ECC, and now it's called L&T Construction, right, Mr. Gopal? So they have their own school of excellence for project management. So these are all, Rahul, these are all various approaches to pursue the execution and therefore pursue excellence in execution. So that's pretty much what I want to add. Over back to Gopalji. Maybe.
Thank you, Ashok. So before I answer this question, there's a question raised by Mr. Albert of TAFE. Okay. The question specifically says, just a minute, let me go. He says, normally people search for excellence when an organization is on fire. Okay. As in L&T case, order books are full. What makes a leader organization to search for excellence? What are the triggers or levers? Good question. So basically, if I have to simplify this question, he is asking, should we be reactive or should the leadership be proactive? Okay. No doubt about it. You have to be proactive. But if you are proactive, even if you are unprepared for a VUCA factor like COVID pandemic, you can do it. I'm telling you my own experience of SKF India. See, January 2020, right? That is when the world came to know of the outbreak of COVID from Wuhan. We have a plant in SKF Global. They have a big plant in China itself, and constantly we are in touch. We had a board meeting in February. All the things of social distancing, being checked at the security gate for temperature monitoring, all that we implemented in February itself. And canteen was completely relayed out. When did India start doing all this? After March, April 2020. We did this in February itself. Because as a DNA, excellence and networking was there in us, and we started implementing work from home, social distancing, canteen, the layout was changed, office layout was changed, bus, the layout was changed. Everything was in place by end February already. And no production was stopped. Right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we had to wait. Some people got infected in spite of all the vaccination was not there. So you have to be proactive, no doubt about it. No doubt about it at all. No point in being reactive. But if you are very proactive, you follow a lot of forward-looking, path-breaking initiative, digitalization, for example, data flows in. And it allows you to dissect and bisect and be ready for different scenarios. No, you don't have to go and attend Harvard Business or Warwick School to understand scenario planning or by BCG. Data is flowing. If you create an environment for data to flow, like the case of L&T, where across 1,000 job sites, 340,000 workers at any point in time working in different sites, thousands and thousands of machines working, the data keeps on flowing. This we initiated, not because of reaction. So no doubt about it. You have to be proactive, but you will be well equipped to manage a crisis if you're very proactive. That's what excellence teaches. Mm-hmm. So, and also I want to also tell the audience, don't become a slave of a tool. Don't say, can I apply Goldrod? Can I apply 7QC tools? Those are all hygiene factors. They are not necessary for you to go up in business. Without that, you will be anyway dead. So they are hygiene factors. Yeah. Somebody was trying to ask something.
No, no, I was just only trying to add to what you mentioned. The key is how do you convert information into insight? And these two examples that you gave are excellent points about, whether it's how L&T Komatsu captures the data from the numerous pieces of equipment on the field wherever in the world, or about how SKF forecasted that pandemic, even though absolutely there is no any past experience, at least in the last 100 years, after the plague and all which came in the early 1900s. Still, the SKF was able to understand its impact and put in place systems by February itself of February of 2020, so that it allowed them to not go through any disruptions. So the point is, yeah, how proactive you are, because the minute you are complacent, the minute you are not restless, then you will let the events get ahead of you and you will not be able to ride the wave. I just want to add that to what you mentioned, Mr.
And this should not be driven only by the top leader. It has to be across the organization. We have to all work as if we are the stakeholders of the company. This is another thing that L&T has taught to many senior leaders like us. They used to bring once in 2 years, we used to have a workout meeting of very senior management people. And the CEO or the chairman used to bring analysts, private equity investors, customers, and told them, please critique this company on parameters which you think is not good. And they were allowed to critique us, and we were exposed to that. And we are all meant to behave as if we are the stakeholders of the company. That's another thing we did. Thank you.
That is excellent. Thank you, Mr. Gopal. Any other questions?
We almost used up all the 1.5 hours almost, I think.
Right, I think we can go another 2-3 minutes more. I think Venkatesh was asking one question. Maybe Gopalji, you may be good person to answer this. Mr. Venkatesh was asking, pursuing EFQM should be, whether it should be top driven or middle driven, and how do you approach that?
So let me go back. To answer this question, let me go back to that slide what Ashok gave. Direction, execution, results. Right? Who gives the direction? Undoubtedly, the top leadership. It's not just the CEO sitting on top. I'm talking about the top leadership. Direction comes from there. Strategy is built by them. But on what basis does a company build a strategy? Market intelligence has to be gathered by field people, not just the sales force, but the people. Like, for example, Ashok is involved, he's working with TAFE. And humongous amount of useful inputs come from the service people. Whether they are doing the service themselves directly or it is outsourced through dealer network. They bring a lot of insights. And those insights drive a strategy in where to play and how to play. How much to grow and what to grow, where to grow and how to grow. So strategy comes from that through those insights. I mean, people can tell pestle analysis, SWOT analysis, so on and so forth. Those are jargons. But strategy, the leadership must drive excellence from top and drive and come up with strategy based on the inputs bottom up. What do the middle and junior level people do? They are at respective place. They have to use those tools to stay fighting fit. 7QC tools, Six Sigma, okay, whether you use predictive maintenance, preventive maintenance, or breakdown maintenance, data, intelligence, innovation. And based on all this, innovation has to be driven. And many companies, the CEO himself sits and presides over R&D review. You can't outsource it. It cannot be outsourced. All the 3 companies which I mentioned, the first company, which is a joint venture company, which is in cable accessories. Second one was a PSU, giant PSU. Third one was a white goods company. The CEO was driving the R&D and innovation. So it's across, but undoubtedly the top has to drive through strategy and deploy it through junior level and middle level, and it has to be pursued across. All 3 have to fire.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, so very well answered, Mr. Gopal. Any other questions, anyone? No? Okay. So Lalita, over to you. Maybe only one thing I would like to suggest is everyone could turn on the cameras. We can take a picture, screenshot for CA's future users or some communication. So please, all of you, turn on your cameras for a second.
This is another benefit of virtual world.
Sorry?
Another big benefit of the virtual world.
Yeah, thank you,
Right.
participants. Just a moment. I'll just take a pic of this. Just a moment. Give me 1 minute, please.
That's all people. I think we have around like 35 plus people.
Yeah, 35, but it's not displaying, sir. I'm not getting on the screen everybody.
Maybe I think maybe you can reduce the picture size or whatever. Anyway, yeah, so you can capture whatever you could.
Yes, sir. Yeah, done.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just
So
give me one more second. One more second.
Yeah.
There is also one. Please bear with me for a second. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Okay, over to you, Lalita.
Yeah, thank you, Ashok sir. First, let me thank Ashok sir for coming forward, taking this first activity, and for bringing such a wonderful speaker like Mr. Gopal Subramanyam sir. And Gopal sir, thank you so much for taking out your valuable time and joining us today. Now, sir, Ashok sir, I'll hand over the mic to Mr. Suman Verma for the concluding remarks. Suman sir, over to you.
Thank you, Lalita ma'am. And it has been a great start for the forum this time. Such esteemed and
Absolutely.
profound guests
Hmm.
we had with us, Mr. Gopal Subramanyam. And EFQM was something we were not exposed to, being most of us are from the Japanese Deming background and all. But it was really insightful, and especially the some concepts like plus one, holistic capability, personal excellence. That was really a good takeaway for me personally. And really, we say that we stop growing until we start learning. So that's a continuous journey for learning, and it has been a great start to this first session. Thank you, Lalita ma'am, Arun sir, and thank you once again, Ashok sir, for bringing Gopal sir. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suman sir. Thank you, Suman sir.
I
Thank you.
also, my
Yeah.
sincere thanks to Mr. Gopal and also everyone, all the audience, for Lalita, for Arun, and to Suman. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, participants, for joining us today. I will be sharing the recordings of the session shortly with you for your records. Thanks once again. We'll meet again, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sure.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.